Imagine a quiet, tree-lined street, manicured lawns, white picket fences, the smell of freshly cut grass hanging in the air. This is Imperial Court, a seemingly perfect cul-de-sac in the heart of suburban America. A place where neighbors wave to each other, kids ride their bikes freely, and the biggest news is usually the annual bake sale. But beneath this idyllic surface, a chilling secret was festering, a darkness that would swallow a dozen people whole, leaving behind nothing but whispers and unanswered questions for years. In the early 1970s, Imperial Court was the epitome of the American dream. But in one particular house, number 9, the dream was about to curdle into a nightmare. This was the home of Martin McNeil, a respected doctor, and his wife, Michelle. To outsiders, they had it all. A beautiful home, 8 loving children, and a prominent place in their community. But inside those walls, a different story was unfolding. Martin wasn't just a doctor. He was a master manipulator, a man with a dark past and an even darker future. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a slow, creeping dread. It started with small oddities that neighbors might have noticed but quickly dismissed. Strange cars coming and going from the McNeil house at all hours. Martin's increasingly erratic behavior. The strained, almost fearful look that sometimes crossed Michelle's face. These were tiny cracks in the perfect suburban facade, cracks that no one thought to look into too deeply. After all, who would suspect a respected doctor, a pillar of the community? The first person to truly vanish wasn't from Imperial Court itself, but her disappearance was the catalyst for everything that followed. Her name was Anna, Martin's mistress from years prior. She disappeared without a trace, her case going cold almost immediately. Martin, of course, was questioned, but with his smooth talk and sterling reputation, he easily deflected any suspicion. The police had nothing concrete, and Anna's disappearance became just another unsolved mystery, a forgotten file in a dusty cabinet. But for Martin, it was a lesson. He had learned he could make people disappear. Back on Imperial Court, life continued its peaceful rhythm. But for Michelle McNeil, peace was a distant memory. She had discovered Martin's multiple affairs, his web of lies, and his fraudulent activities. He wasn't just cheating on her, he was forging documents, stealing identities, and living a complete double life. Michelle, a strong and intelligent woman, decided she had enough. She began documenting his crimes, gathering evidence, and preparing to expose him. She confided in a few close friends and family, telling them, "If anything happens to me, make sure it wasn't an accident." It was a chilling premonition of the tragedy to come. In April 2007, just a week after Michelle underwent cosmetic surgery that Martin had relentlessly pushed for, she was found dead. Her youngest daughter, only 6 years old at the time, found her lifeless in the bathtub. Martin's official story was that she had accidentally drowned, perhaps due to the lingering effects of the surgery medication. The police, deferring to the judgment of a grieving husband who was also a doctor, ruled the death accidental. The case was closed. Imperial Court mourned the loss of a beloved neighbor, and life, on the surface, went on. But for Michelle's older children, the story didn't add up. Their father's grief seemed staged, his explanations too convenient, and their suspicion turned to horror when, just a few weeks after their mother's death, a new woman moved into the house. Her name was Gypsy Willis, and Martin introduced her as the new nanny for the younger children. But the older kids knew the truth. Gypsy was one of their father's mistresses, and she wasn't just the nanny, she was taking their mother's place. She wore their mother's clothes, used her things, and even began to assume her identity. This is where the story of Imperial Court takes its darkest turn. The vanishing wasn't just about one person anymore. It was about the erasure of a life, of a memory. Michelle was being systematically replaced, and anyone who questioned it, anyone who stood in Martin's way, was about to face his wrath. Her children, particularly her daughter Alexis, became Martin's primary target. They were asking too many questions, pushing the police to reopen the investigation into their mother's death. Martin's behavior grew more and more tyrannical. He isolated his children, controlled their finances, and threatened anyone who tried to help them. One by one, people connected to the family began to disappear from their lives. Not in the sense of vanishing into thin air, but of being systematically pushed out, silenced, and intimidated. A close family friend who supported the children was suddenly cut off. A relative who voiced concerns was threatened with legal action. The circle around the McNeil family tightened, with Martin at its center, a spider in a web of deceit and fear. In a way, 11 more people vanished from that house on Imperial Court. First, Michelle's memory was deliberately erased. Then, the support system she had built for her children was dismantled piece by piece. Friends, family, and allies were intimidated into silence. The children themselves became ghosts in their own home, their voices stifled by their father's control. The vibrant, loving family that once lived at number 9 was gone, replaced by a hollow shell of fear and secrets. 12 vanishings in total, all orchestrated by one man. For years, the neighbors on Imperial Court saw nothing amiss. They saw a grieving widower trying to hold his family together with the help of a new nanny. They didn't see the psychological torment, the manipulation, the quiet terror that lived inside those walls. Why didn't anyone ask questions? The answer is as simple as it is terrifying, because they didn't want to see it. It's the bystander effect on a neighborhood-wide scale. The illusion of suburban safety is a powerful one, and people will go to great lengths to protect it, even if it means turning a blind eye to the darkness next door. They trusted the doctor. They believed the facade. But Michelle's children, led by the relentless Alexis, refused to let their mother's memory be erased. They kept pushing, kept fighting, kept demanding answers. They gathered their own evidence, pieced together their father's lies, and presented a compelling case to a new set of investigators who were finally willing to listen. They uncovered Martin's past crimes, his military fraud, his fake identities, and the mountain of debt he was in, a powerful motive for wanting his wife and her life insurance policy out of the picture. The investigation was reopened. Michelle's body was exhumed, and a new autopsy was performed. This time, the medical examiner found a toxic cocktail of prescription drugs in her system, drugs Martin had procured and administered. The cause of death was changed from accidental drowning to undetermined. It was the breakthrough they needed. Martin McNeil, the respected doctor, was finally arrested, not for murder initially, but for the fraud and identity theft his daughters had helped uncover. While in prison for those crimes, the prosecution built its murder case against him. The trial was a media sensation. It pulled back the curtain on the perfect suburb and exposed the monster lurking within. Martin's own children testified against him, bravely recounting the years of abuse and manipulation. They told the jury how their father had drugged their mother, held her head underwater, and then celebrated her death by moving his mistress in. The jury was convinced. In 2013, more than 6 years after Michelle's death, Martin McNeil was found guilty of her murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he ultimately took his own life in 2017. Justice, in a way, was served. But the scars on Imperial Court remain. The house at number 9 stands as a monument to a dark secret and the collective failure of a community to see what was happening right in front of them. The story of the McNeil family is a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes, it wears the mask of a respected doctor, a loving father, a friendly neighbor. It thrives in silence, in the spaces where people are too afraid or too complacent to ask questions. 12 people vanished from that quiet suburb. One was murdered, her memory erased. The others were silenced, their lives appended by a tyrant hiding in plain sight. It took years for the truth to come out, all because a few brave children refused to let their mother be forgotten. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What secrets are hiding behind the closed doors on your street? Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that make you question everything. Until next time, stay aware and stay safe.